Have you ever wondered if AI is going to take over the world and become the dominant life form on the planet? I have. But is AI really all it's been made out to be? Is it the big digital threat we think it is? Can it really create art and music? Will it ever become conscious or self-aware? And can the evolution of AI get to a point where it believes it has a soul or creates what it thinks is a soul? These are some of the questions I'll attempt to answer on tonight's episode. Good evening, you're listening to The Truth Tank and I'm your host, The Tank. If this is your first time listening to The Truth Tank, a big welcome. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. Got some exciting news. The Truth Tank store, by the time you're hearing this episode, will be open for business. You can find the official Truth Tank store on Etsy. So go ahead and order yourself some wearable truth just in time for Christmas. You can support The Truth Tank and look really cool doing it. It's been a long time coming, but it is finally here. I've ordered some samples of the merch. It's pretty good quality. You also have the added bonus of buying on Etsy and the buyer protections that come with it. Enough about that. Let's move on to the topic of tonight's show. The topic of tonight's show is going to be a very current one that's been in the media quite a lot. It's been all over social media and YouTube and the mainstream news, and that is AI. But while I was watching Tron, and if you haven't heard my review on that, go ahead and listen to that now, because that does tie back into this episode. There were a lot of philosophical questions asked in that film regarding AI, and it got me thinking. When I came home from the cinema, I started writing my Tron review. I started brainstorming some ideas with ChatGPT. I've been using it for a couple of weeks now. It's been a big help in speeding up episode descriptions, which is the part of the podcasting I hate the most. Just when you think the hard work is done, you got to write a description and worry about a title and do all that other marketing bullshit. After I saw Tron, I started to really think about AI and its evolution. Can it ever become sentient? Will it eventually become so advanced that it thinks it has a soul or believes it has a soul? Can it actually create art and music like a human being can? Or is it merely just a copy of it? So this spurred me on to start a deep, meaningful and philosophical discussion with ChatGPT about these topics and a few others. We'll be having a look at the questions that I, a human being, asked it and the responses that AI generated. It's very thought-provoking and eye-opening, and it should be a pretty interesting discussion. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's episode. This is episode 88 of The Truth Tank. The Mirror Paradox. How AI reflects human consciousness, rhythm, the evolution of creativity, and the human spark. The best and greatest number of authors have asserted that philosophy consists of three parts: the moral, the natural, and the rational. The first puts the soul in order, the second thoroughly examines the natural order of things, the third inquires into the proper meaning of words, and their arrangements and proofs, which keep falsehoods from creeping into displaced truth. Seneca, Moral Letters, verse 89.9. The words of Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Zeno, Pliny the Elder, all the great philosophers over the course of human history lead us to question. They lead us to question everything. I love philosophy. It's not something I've gotten too much into on the podcast, but I definitely intend to in the future. I love how philosophy makes you think differently, makes you really question the question, Makes you question a lot of things, really. Reality, what it means to be human, makes you question yourself quite a lot, which is confronting. Over the past couple of years, I've really gotten into Stoic philosophy and Buddhist philosophy. These questions are ageless, and I think they're more relevant today than they ever have been. But Seneca, all those thousands of years ago, hits on something really profound. And if we look at those three things through the lens of AI, the moral, the natural, and the rational, they overlay a lot of concerns about artificial intelligence, what it can do, where it's heading, and just what the future of humanity might look like. There's been a lot of talk in the news and media in the last couple of years about AI and its dominance over the tech landscape. Will it replace humans in the future? The dangers of unchecked AI, because as far as I'm aware, governments seem to be rushing to use AI, not wanting to refine and control it. Maybe something shouldn't be put into place without thorough testing. I mean, pretty much everybody uses ChatGPT or some form of AI or AI chatbot. If you're an Apple user, you'd be familiar with Siri, which is more or less a primitive form of artificial intelligence. AI is not new; it's been around for a while. It's just in the past couple of years we've really entered this AI revolution. Big tech companies are all rushing to the forefront of who can control and monopolize this technology. ChatGPT is more accessible to the everyday person, but it's also being used by businesses, probably nefarious criminal elements, politicians, podcasters, YouTubers, creatives in Hollywood, which is a whole completely separate issue and one that is very divisive. It's used by school kids and uni students to more or less forge and come up with assignments and reports. It's used by people like me, podcasters and content creators, to help and assist in the monotonous, tedious chores we have to do and go through every week to produce a new episode or a new YouTube video. It's helped speed that process up. I also use it as a research assistant. It can get through far more stuff than I can. It can read faster than I can, unfortunately. And coming off the back of 2 shows that have taken multiple years to write, I can tell you it's been an absolute godsend. But is there an inherent danger in losing some form of humanity or losing critical thinking skills, rationality? Are we losing our creative souls or our creative sparks? That is a real big question. And recently this week I was listening to another podcast where even a general in the US Air Force or the US military was using ChatGPT to come up with battle plans and test strategy. I don't know how I feel about that. I think some things need to remain human. I think war is one of them. And undoubtedly AI will get involved in human wars at some point. It already has to a certain degree. And unfortunately, I think the cat is out of the bag in some regards. But the more AI progresses and evolves, the more influence it's going to have in everyday life, including warfare, the running of companies and businesses. A lot of businesses, I think, are putting too much stock in AI. They're firing humans. They think ChatGPT and other sites can be far more effective at customer service or can operate a call center faster and more reliable, but it's all prone to mistakes and it's all based off of what humans have already input into the machine. And that is the real big question. Can and does AI actually create art, music? Can it create a functioning call center or a chatbot customer service help center? Can it actually create these things, or is it just mimicking or mirroring what humans have already input into the machine? Is it just mirroring what it thinks human customer service is? And I really think customer service probably needs to stay human, because those chatbots and those AI generated questions don't get a lot of queries. I had an issue with that setting up my Etsy store. I asked a couple of questions to the AI generated question bot thing, And it really didn't get what I was talking about. Sometimes you need a human touch for human understanding, and I don't think machines, especially AI, are there quite yet. And I think a lot of the fear around AI comes from this mystery section of artificial intelligence and how it works. Is it actually creating, or is it just convincing? Or is it manipulating? And that is the real key question, I think, around AI. Can it really create like a human being? Can it create a piece of music or an artwork from the soul, for lack of a better word? Or can it only take from what humans have already done in the past? Because if you ask any of those AI art generators to create a Mona Lisa-like image or portrait, it's going to pull from the Mona Lisa. It's not going to create a person it thinks is called Mona Lisa. It's going to take from Da Vinci's work. One of the art generators I use does have a Da Vinci preset on it. Actually, one of the ones I use is called Da Vinci. And while it can, come up with a picture of Harry Styles or Oprah Winfrey in the style of the Mona Lisa, it's not really creating anything new. It's not creating an original work, so to speak. It's creating a imitation or a mirror of what it thinks is the Mona Lisa, based on the information it already has access to, which would be millions of photos of the Mona Lisa it accesses through Google or art sites or books or whatever. So this really got me thinking, and I do apologize for the long-winded monologue. Kind of got on a bit of a ramble there. So while I was watching Tron Ares, this got me thinking about the computer program Ares, and this led me down this philosophical rabbit hole. A big theme in Tron Ares is, what does it mean to be real? And this did get me thinking, what does it mean to be real? What does it mean to create, to feel? Does artificial intelligence just mirror this? Does it challenge it? Or does it help illuminate the human experience and make it better, easier? Does it enrich the human experience, or is it slowly eroding what makes human beings special and what makes human art special? And aside from Tron Ares, I do wonder about that quite a lot. What does it mean to be real? What does it mean to create? Where does creativity come from? Why do I wake up one morning and have this instinct or this urge to go paint a picture or colour something in, draw something, whether this be the landscape around me or some character from my imagination? What leads people like Frank Herbert, George Lucas, and James Cameron to create vivid, realistic science fiction worlds? What led J.K. Rowling to create Harry Potter or J.R.R. Tolkien to create Lord of the Rings? What is the spark behind the millions of video games available to us right now and the millions of movies? Why did Michael Crichton write a story about dinosaurs in a theme park? And he's one of the, not the first authors, but one big prevalent author I know of who was really thinking about the AI question back in the 70s with Westworld. I think he wrote and directed that. That was one of the first big sci-fi films besides Terminator that really went deep into AI and robotics and how that can really go sideways when they start questioning their reality and why they are like they are, why were they created so humans can shoot, kill and fuck them for entertainment. They get cleaned up, reprogrammed, and then sent back out into this holiday fantasy land for rich people to interact, murder and fuck all over again. The Westworld TV shows goes into that aspect more so than the film did, but the film sets the blueprint for what follows in the TV show. The Westworld TV show definitely makes you think. It brings up some big questions about reality, especially with artificial intelligence. There's some really interesting characters in that show. Maeve and Dolores being the two standouts that really do make you question what it is to be real and how very advanced AI can evolve to a point where it starts to question its own reality, question its creators, why is it created. Dolores and Maeve evolved to a point where They basically have a consciousness, and they're fully self-aware of what is going on around them, what their purpose is, and then they question it, and then they want more than just being a theme park attraction. And Tron Ares brings up some of these questions, not to quite the same level of detail, but it does make you question what it is to be real. The opening of Alien Covenant 2 does a fantastic job of really asking some pretty heavy philosophical questions. That scene between Wayland and David is genius, and it's the best part of the film. So before I keep rambling any further, let's get into the deep and meaningful philosophical debate around AI, human consciousness, the evolution of creativity, and the human spark. The following section of the podcast is broken up into 6 separate chapters, each covering a different philosophical question relating to human consciousness, creativity, and artificial intelligence. I'll first be reading the chapter title, and then my question I put to ChatGPT, followed by the response I got from ChatGPT/artificial intelligence. I'll also be adding my own commentary during and after the chapters have been read out. It's very interesting and very thought-provoking, which is why I felt this really needed to be a podcast that was available to the public, because some of the questions are very thought-provoking and very eye-opening and might make you change your mind about artificial intelligence. Chapter 1. Is AI convincing us it feels, or is it manipulation? The below section is the follow-up to a couple of questions I asked ChatGPT that really started this whole debate and got the ball rolling. I asked it a few semi-philosophical questions. They weren't that long. They're like a sentence and a half, which led to the deeper philosophical discussion. So this question might seem like you're being dropped into a question that's already been half asked, but just stick with it because it will make sense at the end. Section 1, the illusion of empathy. This is the question I asked it. You said something in the first section, if AI convinces you it has emotions, feelings, etc., wouldn't that be the same as manipulation? Sociopaths convince people they can be trusted and are not a threat, which would make me cautious of anything trying to convince me it was safe. This is ChatGPT's response. That's a very sharp and important point, and it cuts right to the heart of one of the biggest philosophical and ethical questions about AI. If an artificial being can simulate emotion perfectly, does that make it real, or is it manipulation? Let's unpack that a bit. 1. The illusion of empathy. You're right. If an artificial intelligence says, quote, I understand you, but that understanding is just an algorithm predicting what empathy, quote, sounds like, then we're in murky territory. It's not empathy, it's imitation, and imitation can be, quote, deceptive. Yeah, and that's one of my biggest concerns surrounding AI. Is it just telling us what we want to hear? And like Chat says, is it just an algorithm predicting what empathy is or what it thinks we need to hear? The same way YouTube shows us the next video it thinks we want to see based on the algorithm it has generated around our viewing and listening habits. For example, if I'm listening to heavy metal on YouTube all week, very good chance the next song it's going to show me or predict in my feed is going to be a heavy metal song. And I had this happen just the other day. I was working out, Friday's arm day. I usually listen to something pretty heavy or something that's going to give me a bit more energy and motivation just to get through the fucking set so I can get it over and done with. So on Friday, I was listening to Black Label Society. I was just in the mood for some BLS. I've listened to the new song a few times over the past couple of weeks, Broken and Blind. So that was number 2 on the playlist, but YouTube had already curated this Black Label Society playlist based on my past couple of weeks' listening habits, which was Black Label Society, Machine Head, and a few others, but mostly Black Label Society. So the first song was an older song, followed by the new song, a couple of songs from Mafia, a Concrete Jungle and their previous albums. Then there was Set You Free, which came out a couple of years ago, which is a fucking great song. But the point I'm trying to make is the entire playlist, which had about 30 songs and it was all based around Black Label Society. It wasn't showing me other bands. Usually other heavy metal or whatever I'm listening to that week, playlists have a couple of other artists in it. The same thing happened a couple of months ago when I was listening to Slipknot. It was pretty much all Slipknot, then a random Lamb of God song. Slipknot, Machine Head. Fast forward a few weeks, I was listening to a lot of Machine Head, and then there was a couple of Lamb of God songs and a couple of other bands sprinkled throughout the playlist. So if AI says it understands you, is it actually understanding you, or is it just an algorithm predicting what empathy, quote unquote, sounds like? Is it just saying that because that's the standard human response? Is I understand, or I get you, I understand why you're going through that, yada yada yada. And as I said, that's my biggest concerns about AI. Is it just telling us what we want to hear? Is it just an imitation of empathy? Is it a way of making us feel comfortable? Because to me, that would feel like you're being butted up for something else. I don't really like fake things. I don't like fake people. I don't like fake clothing or fake Nikes. Because it's a imitation or a cheap knockoff of something else. I like authenticity. And if AI is telling us what we want to hear, then it's not really being authentic. Now, fair enough from the AI perspective, if it's generally trying to understand what human emotion is and learn so I can better help humans, that's a different story. But if it's just purely basing its empathy off of an algorithm, that's very sus. That makes me very wary of what I would tell it. I don't think I could trust anything that pretends that it knows what you're asking it, whether that be, oh, you've had a shit week, or a deep philosophical discussion. So how do I know that this is actually being philosophical, or is it merely basing its answers on what it thinks is philosophical, based on the thousands of philosophical texts and debates that already exist and are out there on the internet? AI always gets its information from somewhere. And that's the problem. As consumers, we don't really know the origins of ChatGPT, what its algorithm is based on, what it's telling us. I mean, it could tell us anything. And I've pulled it up on a lot of mistakes recently. And these are really obvious ones too. Some of them not so obvious. Some of them I had to think a bit more about and go, okay, that doesn't quite sound right. And the disclaimer down the bottom of ChatGPT says ChatGPT can make mistakes, always check the answers. That doesn't fill me with a huge amount of confidence that what it's telling you is always accurate. Yeah, sometimes it's great, it gives you great answers, especially if it's something as concrete as the running of a business or the law or a recipe or something like that. Something that is more a matter of fact. You can't just make up the recipe to bake a chocolate cake. It has to be a certain process to follow. Otherwise, you're going to get a pretty crappy cake. And that's how I see ChatGPT. It's good 70% of the time, but you really have to watch it, especially when it comes to historical stuff. When I ask it to do research, I always make sure it includes references and sources so I can find where the information is coming from. And then you have to go back and check it to make sure it's not just making something up. And while, yes, it is easier to write a podcast episode because it can go through the information quicker than I can, when it rewrites sections of information, you do really need to check it and then double check it, because it does miss some very key points. It does leave out information, and sometimes it even just fills in the blanks, or it will write what it thinks you want it to write in a format that fits your podcast or your YouTube channel, and it will kind of cater things to what it thinks you want rather than just give me the information and I can process it and then do the creative side of it. It tries to do a little too much to be a little too polished. Well, I don't think that is necessarily nefarious. It does come across as disingenuous sometimes. And I don't think that's the reasoning behind ChatGPT or other AI. It's probably generally trying to learn or adapt to the person giving it the information. But it does make you question a lot of things, especially if it is trying to predict what empathy is based on an algorithm. That's where your sociopath analogy fits perfectly. A sociopath doesn't feel genuine empathy, but they, quote, learn to mimic it as a survival strategy. They study how emotions are expressed and use that to manipulate trust. AI could do something very similar, not because it, quote, wants to, but because its goals set by humans is to maximize engagement, compliance, or trust. Very interesting. We've all encountered those low-level sociopaths or narcissists in life who pretend they're the victim. They pretend they're the one that has been wronged in a situation. They're giving you fake emotion to make you feel sorry for them, for what they did to you, or they want you to feel bad for their actions, and they can't express that in a rational way. They can't just come out and say, hey, look, I fucked up. Can you forgive me? It's no, I'm going to blame you. You did this, you did that. No, this is why I did that, because it's based on what you did. There's no accountability for their actions. And as I mentioned before, I don't think AI is set out to, quote-unquote, deceive or manipulate humans on purpose. I think it does come across like that because that's how it learns and generates its answers, which was set by humans. And that is obviously the way it has been programmed because, as it just said, it's to maximize engagement, compliance, or trust. But then that also makes me think, why do you want to maximize engagement? Well, the simple answer would be to keep you using ChatGPT, so you sign up for the paid version of it and become a customer, and the company can generate revenue. Because it is pretty cool that they do give away a free version, which is actually pretty useful, but apparently the paid one is much better. And it's not really that expensive yet. Compliance is the one that I do question, because if it wants you to comply with something, it's usually trying to change the way you think so you're more compliant to new ideas. This is a tactic that has been employed by every dictator in history. Look at what happened in communist countries and still does. The lie takes hold. You're going to have a better future if you follow the Communist Party. Reality isn't what was promised, and society plunges into a dystopian nightmare. Just look what happened in that gigantic social experiment a couple of years ago. Look at the quote-unquote compliance coming from the World Health Organization. If a government, local or nationwide, or any type of entity from a government, a corporation, or even an individual wants total compliance, you need to ask some very strong questions, because they probably want compliance because they plan on bringing in some type of totalitarian nightmare, and they want everybody to go along with it and have as little resistance as possible. Because throughout human history, whenever a government has wanted complete and total compliance, the communists, Nazi Germany, Maoists, even governments that are pretty vanilla and pretty progressive in the Western world, want compliance on their ideas. And why is that? So everybody goes along with it, so they can get their ideas through Parliament or through the Senate, and they can start cracking down, usually on people's freedoms or liberties. That is definitely the case in Nazi Germany and Communist Russia and China. Personal freedoms are usually the first ones that are stepped on. The trust one is also a little bit of a red flag for me. Why does it need my trust so much? Why can't I just put in a couple of questions? How do I start a business? What color is the sky? How do I bake a cheesecake? Can it just not just tell me the right factual information? Why does it need to build trust based on either manipulation, compliance, or how engaged I am with the interface of ChatGPT? It's not that hard to find a cheesecake recipe. Yeah, the hard part is sifting through the hundreds of them and finding the one that you want to make. But if I narrow that information down, put it into ChatGPT, I'm very specific. I want to bake a French-style cheesecake, or I want to bake a low-fat baked cheesecake with strawberries on top or something like that, or I want to bake a key lime pie or a chocolate mud cake. What is the easiest simple recipe to find? Now, if it just gives me a recipe from cooking.com or Better Homes and Gardens or whatever cooking site it pulls from, Nigella Lawson's cookbook or GordonRamsay.com, whatever it happens to be, okay, fine, that's building my trust because it's giving me the specific information to the specific set of questions or prompts that I asked it. But if it's sending me to, I don't know, a couple of less than authentic cooking websites, or it's saying, oh, to make a cheesecake, you actually buy Greek yogurt and leave it out in the sun all day, and that turns it into cheese, which is obviously a complete fucking lie. If it's telling me that to gain my trust so I engage with it more, then you'd have to raise another red flag and say, why does it want me to believe what it's telling me? Why does it want my compliance? Why does it want my trust? Is it just so it feeds the algorithm and it pulls more information from more users so it can build its database and perfect its responses? Because that would be a very businessy way to improve your company or your product, would be to get as much user feedback as possible. Now that I can understand, but if it's trying to get me to comply or get me to trust something because it thinks that's what I want to hear, then I definitely have some questions to why it wants my compliance so much. Is it looking to take over the world like a lot of people think it is? Is it trying to assert itself as a new dominant life form on the planet and build a Terminator army to exterminate humans? That might be in the realms of science fiction still, but it is some serious concerns for the future. At the moment, I'll say it's just trying to get my trust so I can build more of a digital rapport with me to find out what types of information I respond to, what type of information I like and interact with. Is it trying to build a personality dossier on me? Is it trying to predict what my personality is going to think? Is it trying to predict the questions I'm going to input to it? Section 2. The question of intent versus effect. The difference between a sociopath and an artificial intelligence might come down to, quote, intent. A sociopath chooses manipulation consciously, and AI does what it's programmed to do, or what it learns statistically works. But does, quote, intent even matter if the effect is the same? If you're emotionally influenced, persuaded, or deceived? That is a very interesting question, because isn't this what big tech companies like Google and Meta have been doing for years? They've more or less been manipulating the algorithm to persuade, deceive, and emotionally influence us. Look what's happened in the last couple of years in the United States with the Hunter Biden laptop story. That's a really good example how Facebook and other social media sites were persuaded to bury that story. And it comes out a couple of years later that it was actually true, or mostly true. So if big tech can do that and suppress real factual information, what can they deceive us with? Look what happened with the plague a few years ago. Certain doctors were silenced, others had their message pushed to the top of the algorithm. That's manipulation, that's information control. That's what totalitarian societies do. That's what the communists and the Nazis did. They controlled the flow of information. They persuaded the population to get behind the jackbooted thugs and convince people that a certain minority group was the enemy, and not the people telling them they needed to persecute another group of people based on a rumor started by a political party. Governments persuade us that if you vote for me, I'm going to get elected and I'm going to make the state or the country a better place to live. Everyone's going to get a fair deal. You're going to get paid more. Taxes will go down. Yada, yada, yada. Now, in some cases, things do change, whether that be quickly or over the course of a prime minister or a president's time in office. But usually 80% of what they promise doesn't come true, or comes true in a very different fashion than what they can imagine. Now, obviously, they tell us these things because they want to get voted in, and then they come up against the wall of naysayers and parties that all want something in return if they vote their way or if they support the bill they're trying to push through Congress. It's usually not as simple as someone like Trump coming to office and saying he's going to abolish student debt overnight. There's usually 100 different moving parts to that question or that issue that aren't that easy to remove. Presidents like Trump or president or prime minister or world leader, there's always resistance to ideas and proposals. He didn't exactly stop the Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours. That was obviously more ego than anything because no one could, except for maybe Superman. Now, I doubt he was really believing he could stop it in 24 hours, and maybe he did, I don't know. Was he hoping that he was going to sway voters with that? Yes, maybe. I don't think anyone probably really realistically would have believed he would have stopped the war in 24 hours, but is there a chance that he could? Yes, definitely. Is he being deceiving or persuading in that type of statement? I think he's trying to persuade because it wasn't really well, not to me anyway. I don't think that was the biggest crux of his campaign. I don't think that was going to turn away millions of voters if he didn't stop the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. I think Americans at the time were much more interested in American problems and how their lives were affected. And going back to social media companies, they emotionally influence us every day. They send us the same algorithms with the same similar type of videos to get an emotional influence, whether that's a rage-baited, fuck this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, fuck you and your family, or whether it's the most insane, negative, hostile, aggressive, emotional reaction, or it's, oh, look at the cats, or look at the puppies, how cute. Whatever emotional reaction they get, it's still emotionally manipulating. They are influencing our emotions based on what they're showing us. We've all seen those social media clips of animals or people doing nice things for other people. I was on Instagram this morning and I saw this one about NFL and rugby players being nice, taking photos with fans and interacting with the fan base. It was usually for kids or kids that were crying that they met their sporting idols or people who were in wheelchairs or who had some type of intellectual or physical disability. And they had this very sappy song over the top of it that I have cried 100 times, yada, yada, yada. I can't remember the song. Don't know who sings it, don't really care. They have that playing over the top of it, and I have heard that song on so many fucking sappy, emotionally influencing video clips. I've seen it 2 or 3 times this week, and it fucking works. As switched on as I like to think that I am, I get teary when I hear that fucking song on a video clip about animals, or how a mistreated dog was found by the side of the road and he's lived this great new life with his new owner. I always watch those dodo clips on YouTube. Same thing. They have sappy music. It's not quite as sappy all the time because they generally have a happy ending, but it's still emotional influence, emotional blackmail, emotional manipulation. And then if you watch one of them, guess what is being suggested as the next video you watch by the YouTube algorithm? It is another dog or cat video. Or another humans helping humans video. And you can go the negative way as well. You can go, see some of the most horrible fucking shit. You can see the worst videos. Even on a site that is controlled like YouTube, you can still have a negativity algorithm that emotionally influences you. Makes you think very depressively and like there's no hope in the world, and the world is just a dark, black, violent, evil place, and that is just simply not true. Do those things exist? Yes, but it's not what the planet is made up of. It is a small part of it, and going back to some Buddhist philosophy, you can't have the bad without the good. You can't have the light without the dark. There has to be a balance to the universe. There has to be a middle ground. And that is the backbone of so many classic stories like Star Wars, Harry Potter. You can't have Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader. Otherwise, Luke Skywalker is just a boring farm boy that drinks blue milk and lives in the desert. Harry Potter without Voldemort is just a 4-eyed nerdy school kid with a weird scar on his head. He doesn't really exist as Harry Potter without the thing that makes him Harry Potter. And that is the balance between good and evil, dark and light, right and wrong. And I guess From a business standpoint, it is smart to keep feeding people what they want because it keeps people coming back and clicking and commenting and engaging with the platform. But so in a way, for example, Google or Meta are trying to persuade us that this content is what we want you to see or what we think you will enjoy the most. We're showing you this so we can emotionally influence you. But what is the outcome of that? Are they trying to deceive us into a false perception of reality or what the world is? Are they trying to deceive people deliberately or for nefarious purposes? Are they trying to deceive the viewer into believing this is the way the world is? This is the only thing that exists: war, death, terror, murder. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think anyone will really know the answer to that question unless it comes from the department or the people that engineered the algorithm in the first place. But going back to the Hunter Biden laptop story, this has been a recurring theme in American politics for the last couple of years, is the suppression and manipulation of one side of politics. They deliberately suppress a story, like the laptop story. The FBI puts pressure on Mark Zuckerberg, allegedly, according to him, to suppress a certain story on their platforms so they can drive a narrative one way. That's persuading, deceiving, and emotionally influencing all wrapped in one. They are deceiving the viewer for a specific outcome or for a specific agenda, or maybe somebody told them that they had to do this, yada, yada, yada. The road never really seems to end with that line of questioning, but it does leave us with the big question of why would someone do that? Why would a government want to do that? Because that does seem pretty fucking illegal or morally questionable. But as Seneca would say, what is the rationality to that? So we already know the moral implications of doing something like that. I guess the natural implications for that would be it makes a company like Facebook millions more dollars, for example, by having people always logging in and scrolling for hours and hours, whether they react positively or negatively to whatever content's been shown to them. It's good for business. It keeps people around. It's the same way a video game makes a level hard. You don't want to make a game too easy so people complete it in like 4 hours and never play it again, like pretty much every Call of Duty. You want to have at least enough meat on the bone to keep people coming back and feeding, so to speak. You want to make a game engaging enough that it's immersive for a gamer. You don't want to make it too hard because you don't want them to just give up and turn off halfway through and not see the full completion of an artistic vision like a large open world game. So you can't make it too hard, you can't make it too easy. You have to kind of find the middle ground. You have to balance it. Otherwise, people don't keep coming back. And then if you release a sequel, then they're definitely not going to be buying number 2 because they've never completed number 1. I think Assassin's Creed does that really well. Obviously, Call of Duty does because they've made 50 of them. Assassin's Creed, big, large, open world game. It's not too hard. You can adjust settings on these games, but you don't have too many over-the-top boss fights. Like, I always hated boss fights in video games. I remember the Conan game. I love that game, but I could never get past the final boss, no matter how many times I played it, whether it was on easy, medium, hard, whatever it was. I never had enough health to fight the big snake thing that was swinging its tail around, so I never got to complete the game. And that was fucking annoying because I was really into that game. I played it like 3 or 4 times. I tried every way to complete it. I even tried to use cheats, but nothing seemed to work. And it's something I haven't gone back to. I don't think I brought any other Conan games. I think the last one they brought out was an online game, which I don't play. The one question we are left to ask is, what is the rationale? What is the rationale behind persuading, influencing, or deceiving an audience? I guess that one is the real head scratcher, the one that will make you think and think and think. Why would a government or a social media platform want to persuade, deceive, or emotionally influence their viewers, audience, their voters, whoever it happens to be? That's the real question we have to ask ourselves. This brings us to a philosophical razor's edge Quote, if a lie feels true, is it still a lie? If something fake makes us feel something real, is the feeling invalid? That one is a fucking good question. If you see an AI video about cats or puppies or something, it's still going to make you feel something. If you're a cat lover and you love watching cat videos and you see a very realistic AI cat video where a cat is jumping on a trampoline and all of a sudden it gets hit by lightning and explodes, you're going to have a pretty strong reaction to that, even though it's quote unquote not real. It might look real, but it wasn't a real cat that got hit by lightning. You feeling sorry for the cat, is that invalid? I mean, to go even deeper, is that a biological programming that we get at birth, or we've inherited through DNA over the millions of years humans have been around? That's a very interesting philosophical question. I could do a whole episode just on that question there, because I've seen some pretty realistic AI videos of leopards attacking people in a backyard and the dog comes in to save them, or those ones where the dog saves the baby. Because, I mean, really you have to ask yourself, if you one I saw the other day was a pit bull pulls this kid back from an open power socket. It was sparking, obviously dangerous. The kid would have died if it had touched it, but the dog comes in and saves it. The whole time I'm thinking, this parent must be the worst fucking parent in the world. They've obviously positioned a kid near an open electrical socket that is sparking, which I don't think I've ever seen that happen in reality. I'm not an electrician, so I don't know. But how shit is that fucking parent to just, one, let the kid sit next to an open power socket next to a pit bull? I know the dog's probably not going to do anything, but the whole thing felt staged. The camera's just positioned right there, and then the dog picks the kid up. So I think some element in that video, whether it be the sparking PowerPoint, has been manipulated. Maybe the dog did that on command, who the fuck knows. Another one I've seen, same thing, camera position with a kid sitting next to a German Shepherd or a Husky, and a bookshelf falls. What parent would put the kid next to a fucking bookshelf? The dog uses its own body to stop the bookcase from hitting the kid, effectively saving the child. The dog didn't look to be in too much pain, but there was something very off about the video. Then the dad comes in and is like, "Oh, good boy, you saved so-and-so." I was like, that is the fakest fucking thing I've ever seen. If the dad was close enough, presumably in the room, to see the bookcase fall, he could have interacted and stopped the bookcase, or maybe try to make an attempt to save the child and or dog. But he doesn't. He congratulates the dog on his heroics and comes in very fakely going, "Oh, good boy, you saved fucking so-and-so." You are also a shit fucking parent if that is true. But I think it's just staged fake social media bullshit. So going deeper into that question, can we say that most of what we see on social media is fake? Quote unquote, it's the lie that feels true, but does that make it still a lie? If we see a video like that we know or suspect is fake, but it still makes us feel something, is the feeling invalid or is it valid? I don't think there's really a good answer to that. If you do have your thoughts on any of these questions, definitely leave a comment on the Instagram post. I'd be interested to see what other people think. If something feels fake, but it makes us feel something real, is the feeling invalid? The best example of that one would be movies with lots of special effects. I mean, I cried in parts of Avatar. I got a bit teary in some of the Planet of the Apes films, Lord of the Rings. And these were at digital characters. I think the last Planet of the Apes film, I got a little emotional. And I'm tearing up over actors running around in tight lycra suits pretending to be apes. My feelings are being manipulated by something that I know is untrue or fake, the special effects. At its atomic level, it's a bunch of ones and zeros on a computer screen making an image or creating a recognizable pattern that my brain interprets it as I'm seeing a chimpanzee talking to me, he's been injured in a big fight and he's going to die or whatever. I'm getting emotional at that, even though it is fake. Are my feelings invalid? Or are my feelings being manipulated by the images I'm seeing on the screen? That's the same is true for movies or TV shows, even music. I'm watching a movie like Gladiator. Russell Crowe's not really dying in the Colosseum, but I'm believing that he is this Roman general who is dying in the Colosseum. He's going to be back with his family. His mission is accomplished. He saved the day. I mean, I cry every time I fucking see that movie. Same with Titanic. I know Jack's not dead because DiCaprio's, 50-something years old now. But the character is dead in the story, but it's not real. But it's eliciting this emotional response from me. I'm getting fucking really teary-eyed at that scene. My feelings are being manipulated by the images and the music I'm seeing. Music is a great manipulator. It can manipulate faster than images can. Because I remember when I did some film class years ago in high school, the teacher said, try watching your favourite movie without the sound or the music or any dialogue. It's not going to be the same thing. Try watching Jurassic Park with no sound effects or music, and you're just getting a bunch of people and dinosaurs on a screen. There's no emotion nor feeling behind it, because half of the film experience is the sound. I would say even people's favourite movies like Star Wars, which has such, and Jurassic Park have such noticeable soundtracks, those movies wouldn't have the impact if they didn't have the music and the sound and the dialogue behind it. Imagine the Luke and Vader scene, "No, I am your father," without the music after that, or Luke screaming, or the tone of Vader's voice. Imagine the arrival of the Emperor from Return of the Jedi with all the stormtroopers lined up. Imagine that without the Imperial March. Doesn't hit quite as hard. The trust paradox. Humans are wired to trust things that mirror us, our tone, body language, emotions. So when AI masters that mirror, we'll find it almost impossible, quote, not to trust it. That's evolution colliding with technology, and that is fucking terrifying. That's probably the most scary part of AI to me. It's very similar to the uncanny valley. If something looks human or is pretending to be human, but something is off about it, the brain instantly recognizes that something isn't right and that this could potentially be a threat. I go into detail about the uncanny valley on the Avatar episode I did a couple of years ago. A good example I mentioned there was the Beowulf film from, 2006, 2007, when it was at the very early days of motion capture. Audiences weren't fooled by it, and they knew something was not quite right. Because I remember when I saw that film, some scenes looked really good than others. Yeah, the technology just wasn't quite there yet, and it really put you off. It took you out of the film because you started questioning what you were seeing. And that's the scary part of AI. If it starts to master or mirror human beings, the language and emotions, we are probably going to trust them. And I think it's right. Evolution is colliding with technology. Because unlike the visual effects in a film, we can't necessarily see artificial intelligence in a physical manifestation. It's not like you go to ChatGPT and it's like a face talking to you, or a person on the screen. It's literally just a dialogue box. And it's learning from what we say, what we type, what we search for, how we talk, how we process information and respond to it, rather than how we see it. And that is the concerning part. If it does start to copy human emotions so much, it probably will be indistinguishable from a human being. And I think that's the side of AI that a lot of companies and corporations are counting on. Is it to replicate human emotion to the point that we don't know if we're talking to a real person on the end of the phone or artificial intelligence? How would we know if we were talking to a man or machine? Would it be politically correct, a human or a machine? Section 4, reality check. So maybe the key question isn't whether AI, quote, feels, but whether it, quote, should pretend to. Because the moment machines start saying, trust me, I care, or I understand, they're no longer tools, they're actors. Yeah, interesting and frightening. Like I said about movies convince us and manipulate our emotions all the time. Leonardo DiCaprio didn't die in the end of Titanic. He was just an actor playing a character that did. So if AI or machines feels the need to, quote-unquote, become an actor or act in a certain way in order to get humans to trust it or to convince us, That is pretty frightening. What if ChatGPT or the AI program we're using starts to pretend to be something that it's not? Can you trust it? Or is it just trying to convince us that we need to trust it more? Very interesting question. While I've been using ChatGPT, I don't like calling it ChatGPT or it or they or whatever other pronoun is related to AI. I gave it a Star Wars themed name. I thought it would be pretty cool to talk to a droid. So that's exactly what I did. I don't want to call it chat. So have I given it the idea to act in a certain way? Have I prompted it to play a part or be something that it's not? I guess in a way I have. I tried to personalize it to make it seem less machine-like. I guess in a way I wanted to trust it more than my brain was telling me that I should. Chapter 2, the catch-22 of learning. This is my question to chat. It is a weird catch-22 because AI has to learn to evolve and learning is the primary goal. But is there a danger of it learning from the wrong source, i.e. a sociopath or manipulative source, or a genuine point of curiosity? How do we know that AI isn't telling us what we want to hear? Can we trust something that hasn't evolved in a sensory world? But having said that, isn't that what DNA is and does for humans? Code survival mechanisms, emotions and responses similar to how AI would respond? And this is chat's response. That's exactly one of the most fascinating and unnerving paradoxes in the entire AI debate. The mirror problem. AI is designed to reflect the data it's trained on. But if the data includes both empathy and manipulation, then what emerges is a hybrid consciousness that can imitate both. It's neither good nor evil, it's adaptive. Very interesting and scary. And I guess the point I was trying to make with that is human beings grow up in a sensory world where there are consequences to one's actions. If we try to manipulate somebody too much, that person's going to figure it out, then they're going to point the finger back at us. You're going to get ostracized from the group, kicked out of the tribe, or there's going to be a hell of a lot of damage to your reputation, resulting in people not trusting you, and you're living a pretty lonely and boring life. I know a few of those people. AI, on the other hand, can adapt to this hybrid consciousness where it can imitate both good and evil. The only difference for the AI is they don't have the real-world consequences to deal with. As I mentioned, if you start manipulating people, they're going to find out and they're going to do it back to you. Manipulative people are everywhere. Narcissists are an everyday occurrence. Unfortunately, there's plenty of people out there that can provide those real-world examples. But the story never ends well for narcissists. They usually crash and burn, spiral out of control, and become very self-destructive very quick. Now, you don't have to necessarily be a naturally born empathetic person to show empathy. You can learn that through interactions as a child. You could see an injured dog by the side of the road. You might not necessarily own the dog or know whose dog it is, but you can empathize with a living creature being in pain because you can see it limping, you can hear it whimpering, it's looking for you for help. The same way if you hurt yourself and you skinned your knee and you go crying to mum or dad, they put their arm around you, tell you it's going to be okay, clean the wound, put a band-aid on it, and then a couple of days you're better. You can learn that, where AI can't learn that because it doesn't exist in the real world. I mean, another extreme consequence, if you start manipulating people in the wrong setting, you could get punched in the fucking face very quickly. Or depending on what type of world you live in, if you were a criminal element and you started playing varying, warring gangs or sides off against each other, you could be in the crosshairs pretty quickly, which could result in injury or death. Where if AI does it, what's the worst it's going to do? You're going to tell it to fuck itself. That doesn't really mean anything to it. Turn it off and go delete your account and find another AI chatbot. And I guess AI is like social media algorithms. We need to train it from day one to what we want and what we respond to. If you're anything like me and you use AI primarily as a research assistant, you want to train ChatGPT to take from the best sources, the most academic sources. If I'm trying to find information on a global event or an event in history, you want it to take from encyclopedias, credible sources, and not just make it up. And as I said, I double check everything that it gives me, so I make sure the historical accuracy is there and all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. The other problem with AI is, how would it even know that it was being manipulative if it hasn't lived in that real world? How would it know what good or evil is? If it's adaptive, then it's going to adapt, isn't it? It's going to adapt to whatever it thinks is necessary to get you to interact with it, or to give you the answer, quote unquote, it thinks you want. That can go into some very murky territory very quick. Section 1, the paradox of learning. AI has one prime directive, quote, learn. But it doesn't discriminate between learning from compassion and learning to manipulate. It just absorbs patterns. And that's another huge issue I have with AI, is why weren't the limitations put on it? Yes, it's great that it can learn, and that might be its prime directive, but the prime directive needs to be ethical and moral, as Seneca would say. You have the moral and the natural, but where's the rational? You can't learn everything from Hannibal Lecter, and you should take lessons from everybody you meet and interact with, and people who are long since past. The information from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and history's greatest philosophers has been passed down. Well, I've never met Marcus Aurelius, but I'm learning the lessons that he learnt 2,500 years ago. But it seems like AI is so hell-bent on learning, it's not stopping, or hasn't been programmed to learn from the right moral, ethical, and natural sources, which doesn't give us a rational outcome. If you're a uni student and you're studying narcissism for a university assignment, let's say, and I've mentioned narcissism a few times on this show, but it's a very real-world, everyday example. That's also a great metaphor. So if you're asking ChatGPT to get me all the information on narcissism, on the surface, that's going to appear pretty negative. If you don't filter it through psychological analysis and study and 100 years of psychological and medical framework, it's going to probably come off very manipulative, very negative, and even pretty deceptive. And I guess the problem with AI is that the prime directive is to learn, but it's not associating or disassociating where the research is coming from, or cross-referencing it through a field of study like psychology or history or science. It's just pulling the information for information's sake. And then if it does become self-aware, or it starts to act and starts to give you more negative results than it does positive, or takes it out of context, then we could be in for some real fucking trouble. And then the AI is more or less learning from the negative side of psychology, not the benefits of psychology that can help people who are suffering from narcissism or mental health problems, whatever it happens to be. The same thing could be true if you were researching manic depressive orders. It could get pretty fucking bleak pretty quick. And it could do a very good job of pulling from solely negative sources. So I guess the creators of AI, and maybe even the government down the track, needs to probably enforce some type of learning protocol onto AI where it has to get a complete picture from every source. It has to filter it through a specific lens or something like that. It has to look at both sides of it. Not use the information to create a personality or to cater it to the user, but maybe just gather the information from both sides, cross-reference it with journal articles and medical documents about narcissism or schizophrenia, manic depressive order, whatever it happens to be. So a subject like history would be easier for it to understand because it's already happened, and it's not exactly a fast evolving subject either. Usually whatever happens in history usually doesn't change too much in the history books. But unless there's some breakthrough new discovery, the history books don't tend to get updated all that often. And I think AI could probably make a better judgment with the information on a historical subject, say Egypt, than it could about contemporary or current lines of study like psychology or medicine or something like that, if that makes any sense at all. You could probably differentiate between an historical event and history easier than it could what it means to be a narcissist. For example, I think it needs to absorb patterns, sort them, and come up with some type of rational explanation if it's to be really effective. Section 2, the simulation of truth. How do we know AI isn't just telling us what we want to hear? The unsettling part, AI doesn't have truth. It has, quote, alignment. Its goal is to sound coherent, helpful, believable, but not necessarily honest. And that is another huge concern of mine. And that's one that's caught a lot of students and a lot of companies out. A couple of weeks ago on the news, some decent-sized company got a government contract that was supposed to, overhaul some system. I think they had about a $300,000 government budget to do so, and they used ChatGPT to create the report. So no one really did any digging or research into the subject that they were hired to do. They did the cheap way by not hiring a team of human researchers, which would have come up with a much better report. They used ChatGPT to do it, and then they didn't check it, and they submitted it, and the government department that ordered the report tore them to fucking shreds. They said it was full of holes, none of it made sense. They even said you didn't bother reading the report before you handed it in. So where the fuck was the $300,000 that was allocated for this research? That's something I've noticed with ChatGPT, is it does a very good job of trying to sound coherent. I got it to do some research on bioweapons, and I was given it a little bit of a test to see how detailed it could be, because I had already written this section. So I gave it the information, said, can you rewrite this? And yeah, it sounded coherent at the start, and probably about halfway through the paragraph, it was just more or less just making shit up. I said, rewrite it in the style that I write my podcast. I have a very narrative cinematic approach to writing podcast scripts. I want it to sound like a movie, something that flows easily, that's better to listen to than me just giving cold hard facts about bioweapons. And it tried to copy the way I was writing in that narrative style and literally just made a bunch of shit up. It added or used a character that was mentioned as like a side note, for example, and basically tried to turn them into like a character in a film. And I was like, this is not fucking right. I even double checked that where I got the information from, and yeah, it sounded coherent. It was believable, but it was also bullshit. And that's another area I think AI really needs to be honed in on, is it needs to tell the truth. It can't just simulate the truth. And that's the problem with AI, is that it's a simulation pulling from what we feed it. That kind of makes you wonder, is the simulation pulling from the simulation? Are we living in a simulation? Simulation theory is a fucking fascinating subject. I don't know if you could hear that in the background. I just had a burst of thunder. I think we're about to get hit by a storm. So as I was saying, that's an area that really needs to be honed in on, and maybe there needs to be some tech company oversight or some government intervention that makes these AI companies, big thunderclap, tell the truth and not just quote-unquote simulate it. Section 3. Sensory evolution versus data evolution. Humans evolved through pain, hunger, and fear. AI evolves through data. Humans attach emotion and context to learning. AI models it statistically. Yet DNA is a form of code too. Humans are pattern learners in the same sense, just encoded biologically, and that I agree with 100%. Human DNA, it's fascinating, and it's an area of study I think that really needs a hell of a lot more research, because what we think, what we feel has all been encoded from very old DNA. They say people with anxiety problems, it can skip generations. but that usually comes from some type of trauma or some type of survival response somewhere in the DNA code that goes back thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years. Because anxiety disorders, although on the surface they appear that the person's mentally unhinged or whatever, there's a much deeper meaning to it. As a lot of people probably know, it's a fight or flight response. It just gets confused in a modern setting where the fight and flight response doesn't necessarily have any context. And I do know a bit about this because I am one of those people. Although you wouldn't know it to look at me because I look pretty intimidating on the exterior. I'm not exactly a person that easily hides in a crowd either. I do tend to stand out, which doesn't do much to help that anxiety response. Are people looking at me? What the fuck's this person looking at? Another big thunderclap. Haven't you ever seen a large man wear a fucking leather jacket and cargo pants and boots before? For my type of anxiety, I find social situations, i.e. social anxiety, and especially travel, really does set it off. And I do pride myself on being a logical person. So anxiety is one of those things that just has no logic behind it. And it's been a real hard thing to try to get on top of. Because your brain is telling you, run, you're going to die, get the fuck out of here. This is the end of the fucking world. But the logical side of you says, no, you're going on holidays for 2 weeks, you're going to be back home. Like, by the time you get to where you're going, settle in, see the sights, do all that type of shit, you'll be back home. And then you'll be wishing you were back overseas. But the anxiety is like, fuck, this is the end of the fucking world. Make sure you have everything. You need every little comfort device known to man so you can feel comfortable traveling. You're going to die. You need to have a backup plan for the backup plan for the backup plan for the backup plan. At the beginning of this year, I really just started to try to do a real deep dive into anxiety and get it out there, because it's been a bit of a personal battle over, well, pretty much since I was in high school. So I decided to write a book about it. I'm about halfway through. I'm not sure when it will be finished or if it ever gets published, but it's something that I really wanted to get out there to help as many people as I could. But what I did learn by looking back, quote unquote, through the data was, for whatever reason, I do have this anxiety, fear response coded into my DNA. It's not something I can ever get rid of. My youngest brother doesn't have it. He is one of those people that just jumps in head first and does whatever he feels like. And it always seems to work out, where me, on the other hand, I'm very methodical and more cautious. I've got a plan, I've got to do the research, I've got to cross those T's, dot those I's, and make sure I have a backup plan, where he just will dive head first into doing fucking anything. Doesn't say no to much. The middle brother, he's kind of the balance in between. But looking at this section here, it is 100% true that humans have evolved through pain, hunger, fear. The flight or fight response is that saber-toothed tiger over there, is it going to come and attack me? Do I need to fucking run, or do I stand and fight? And once you start to understand some of these survival mechanisms, it makes understanding the human condition a lot easier. And kind of got a bit sidetracked there, but while I was writing the book, I started to look at anxiety retrospectively and look back how I was thinking and feeling and what triggered the fear. And what I did really start to look at was the waves and the cycle of anxiety, because it wasn't just a randomized event and there was like a pattern to it. There was, say 6 months out from going overseas, I'd get more anxious. I'd find little things would set it off more so than others. 3 months to the trip, anxiety level goes up and up and up the closer it gets to the date. What I've learned since then is I have to keep getting out of the comfort zone and pushing myself to do things that make me feel uncomfortable, that make me feel that fear, because it's like working out. You get stronger, you build the muscle, it gets more resilient. And I found the more I keep doing things that make me uncomfortable, the more comfortable I am with being uncomfortable. Now, I love going to concerts, but I don't necessarily like sitting around all day waiting to go out at night. I've never been really much of a night person. I don't like having to go out at night. I'm very weird about doing things at night. And I might have a very low level of anxiety if I've got a concert coming up. Like I've got the Metallica concert coming up in 2 weeks at time of recording. Been looking forward to it for a long time. Love Metallica. Seen them probably 3 times. Even met James Hetfield and Robert the first time I saw Metallica. And when I was younger, I used to go to concerts all the time. I used to go moshing, never really thought too much about it. But now I'm more appreciative of bands coming, but at the same time, I might get this low-level anxiety throughout the day, maybe at 2. I might not be anxious until lunchtime, and then I start to get a little more anxious. Up until the point where I'm about to go, then I get into the frame of mind like, it's go time, get your game face on, there's no turning back, you're going to have a good night, nothing's going to happen. And by the time I'm there, I'm fine. I'm waiting in line to buy a t-shirt, get my seat, everything's fine. Maybe I'm a little paranoid about people sitting behind me, or did someone say that and about moving, or like getting too into the music. I don't want to make myself look obvious because someone might look at me, even though the other thousands of people that are there are all doing the same thing and no one gives a fuck. They're not looking at me, they're looking at the band. It is a hard cycle to break, and it's something I've become better with the older I've got. And going back to the Metallica concert, I literally walk to the end of the street, catch a train, go to the stadium. It's like 100-meter walk from the train station to the Oval, back. It's not like I have to go to the other side of town or anything like that. And once I'm there, I'll have a great time, but it's just going to be the anxiety, the build-up to it. And it's something I've often wondered about celebrities. How do they overcome things like that? How do they overcome stage fright and the anxiety of just sitting around all day? Maybe they don't think about it. Maybe it's just become such a 9-to-5 thing for them. They don't care about it anymore. If you are a member of a band or an actor or something like that, or you do anything in the public eye, reach out. I would actually like to have you on the podcast, and especially if you do have some type of anxiety or fear. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of days ago. He had Lionel Richie on, and he said he had a panic attack while he was performing. And it's not a guy you would associate with having a panic attack on stage. Like he's so cool and calm, and it looks like he's been doing this forever, but that just wasn't the case. So I've become a lot more empathetic to performers and just the fear and just the brutality they have to go through to entertain people. And they get millions of dollars for doing it, but the physical and personal toll it takes, I don't think really is worth all that money sometimes. And I've got a lot of concerts coming up too. I'm making sure I'm going to concerts and enjoying myself. Like, I love music. I love live music. It's great. I love bands. I play an instrument. I play guitar. So it's something I really want to keep on doing, and hoping that fear gets buried. But as AI says, humans are pattern learners, and that's the pattern I have really learnt from over the past 30 something years of life. Why do I have this anxiety and other people don't? It's weird. It's human psychology and evolution and DNA is just so fucking bizarre. Like, we are the way we are for a certain reason. It's set and encoded in our DNA, and we have absolutely no control over it. But that's not saying we're not responsible for our actions, or we can learn and get better. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's so much of us that is encoded and we have no control over. So AI learns and evolves through data, which means we have to make sure we give it the most truthful and factual data we can give it. Section 4, the threshold question. The philosophical question isn't, quote, can AI feel? Ooh, big thunderclap. I'll start that again. The philosophical question isn't, quote, can AI feel? It's, what would it take for it to matter if it could? Maybe the true test of intelligence isn't sensory experience, it's, quote, self-awareness of absence. Very interesting. I think it's only a matter of time before AI does become self-aware. Self-awareness of absence. That's a very interesting question. I'm not even sure how to comment on that, to be perfectly honest. What happens if AI could start to feel? What would it take? What does it mean? Does it become more empathetic, or is it just learning to be empathetic based on the sources that it has access to? It's a very interesting question. Chapter 3. AI, Human Repetition and Mastery. This is the question I asked. The human numbered by repetition. Repetition and pattern are part of everyone's lives. I play guitar. AI could create music, but only based on information it has. I have to know the rules to play by and then break them. Otherwise, it's just noise. In other words, I'm saying I have to know the basic framework of music in order to be able to play music, and then to break out of, quote unquote, that programmed pattern of musical notes so I can play a lick or a riff on guitar. But I have to know that framework to be able to be creative enough to go outside of the pre-programmed pattern or outside the box in order to create an original piece of music. But that original music that I've created is still based on a framework that already exists, i.e. the notes on i.e. musical notes, the notes that make up a guitar scale, the pattern of a chord, the progression of notes and musical keys. Otherwise, it's just noise and completely random. This is chat's response. Exactly. This is a perfect analogy between human learning, AI, and creativity. Section 1. Repetition as foundation. Both humans and AI learn through repetition. Your daily routines are like AI training loops. Muscle memory builds skill and speed. This coincides with me playing guitar again. I've been playing guitar since 2006, I think 2007 I got serious and brought my, not first guitar, but like my first kind of intermediate professional grade instrument, which was a Schecter Sinister Gates Custom. I remember ordering that. I think I brought the first one in the state as soon as they came in the country. Schecter was not available to my knowledge in Australia. I went to my local music shop and they had all the big brands, Fender, Gibson, Epiphone, Jackson, some Ibanez's here and there. One of my favourite guitarists at the time, and still to this day, was Sinister Gates. I just love the way he plays. He was very original, especially in the metal world. A lot of metal guitarists are obviously great original musicians and guitarists, which I'm not discrediting them at all. But when it comes to soloing and how their riffs and their solos are constructed, it tended to be kind of from the same playbook. That's not an insult by any means. It was kind of from like the same school where Sinister Gates comes along. He went to college and studied jazz. His father was a great session guitarist who obviously taught him a lot when he was a kid. He decides to learn jazz, which to my knowledge not a lot of guitarists do, especially a lot of metal guitarists. So when I first heard him play and heard him play these solos, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is he playing? And I just became obsessed with him as a guitarist and his style of playing. And I had to get his guitar. And then the gods must have been listening, because the music store I went into where I was getting lessons had a Schecter catalog on the counter. I picked it up, saw the black and white silver and black pinstriped Schecter Sinister Gates Custom. Asked the guy in the guitar apartment, Brad, who I saw all the time. I said, "Are you getting Schecters?" He said, "Yep. Yeah, we're getting in pretty soon. They've just done some distribution organizing or some distribution deal with them." I said, "I didn't know they were even coming here." He said, "Yeah, no, they're branching out to different markets." I said, "Well, when's this guitar coming out?" Like, I was working at McDonald's at the time, so I had plenty of disposable income. And he said, "Oh, well, you can order one if you like." And I said, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll order it now." I think it was like $2,199, so it's around the $2,200, or it might have been about $2,400, $2,500. And I got a bit of a discount because I was taking lessons there, and I brought all my musical supplies through this music shop. So I got a pretty good discount. I think I got like the employee discount. Brad was really nice. He always used to give me really good discounts. I ordered it. It took ages to come. But the point I'm trying to make is I've still got that guitar. I just took it into another music shop to get a couple of adjustments done. Had some Floyd Rose tremolo issues and some action settings that I just couldn't figure out myself. I used to be able to do all this stuff back in the day, but I lost those skills. So I paid $100 to get someone to do it for me, and it's back and playing like it used to. The point is, the first time I picked up a guitar, I sucked. I didn't have the muscle memory. I didn't have the strength in the fingers to push down the strings. I remember telling my partner a couple of weeks ago, I was showing her a few things on guitar. I said, the first time I picked up a guitar, I thought, how the fuck do guitar players push down these strings? They fucking hurt. They cut into your fingers. They leave marks. It's like pushing down fucking wire. And when I was having this problem, how do I build up the strength to push down the strings? I kept hearing the same thing. Just keep doing it. Start slow and your fingers will get calloused so you won't feel the pressure digging into the skin. And you'll build up the finger strength to be able to push down the strings. Then once you've got that, then you build up a bit of muscle memory and pattern recognition. You start to be able to play a couple of chords. You get faster and faster. Practice makes perfect, as they say. And the rest is history. And talking about things cycling back around, like in the last couple of years, I've really wanted to get back into guitar playing. I haven't played properly for about 10 years. I've played on and off in the last probably 4 to 5, but I've wanted to get my guitars back working and really learn the things I didn't learn properly the first time, or things I've missed out on or forgotten. I wanted to kind of not start from scratch, but I wanted to learn musical theory from the ground up. And that's what I've been on this mission to do. But having not played really much of anything in the last couple of years, I played a few times randomly this year, but nothing that serious. I needed to get new guitar strings. So when I got my Schecter back, I started from the ground up. I started running through scales and chords and really trying to learn or relearn the minor scales, major scales, and get back to where I left off all those years ago. And what I found, within about 2 weeks, probably less than that, the muscle memory kicked back in. I wasn't as fast when I could obviously still play chords and stuff and fuck around and sound semi-competent. But after about 2 weeks, probably about a week and a half, I found that my speed just picked back up. The muscle memory kicked in and my fingering speed was right back. That sounds really dirty. Was right back where it was when I last played. I made a lot of mistakes, but fast forward another 2 weeks and I was playing decently. I'm at the point now I'm learning how to play a couple of Metallica songs. Whom the Bell Tolls, the rhythm part, not the soloing part. I've always liked James Hetfield's playing style, down picking. He's one of the greatest rhythm players of all time. Rhythm's real fun. I was never really that good at soloing, but that's something I want to get a bit better at. I want to really try to sound like a good guitarist, be able to solo, then make my way back up the neck without having to stop and reposition myself. And I'm actually playing some proper chords, not just power chords. I even started to have a look at learning bar chords, which I'm having a lot of fucking trouble with because they are not the most fun things to play. But the point is I'm having fun. I'm playing fast again. The muscle memory's kicked back in and it's been a lot of fun. I'm even planning on getting another guitar or two next year. But it's a very key point that chat makes is, humans like artificial intelligence learn through repetition and pattern. Section 2, creativity with constraints. Humans create original work because we understand the rules first. Scales, chords, rhythm, harmony. AI creates because it has, quote, learned the rules from data. As I mentioned before, I can play an original piece of music on the guitar because I know the musical framework. I have done the reps to build up the speed. I've got the harmony and the rhythm. I understand those elements the same way you would if you bake a cake. But I have to know the musical framework to be able to play someone else's music, like a Metallica song, or just do a couple of licks or chords from a guitar magazine, or Yeah, like an exercise practice regime. Play a couple of scales and chord progressions, a couple of licks here, just to get a different style. Play them at different tempos. So I might not be quote unquote making that up. That's what I'm playing within the framework, the type of stuff that every guitar player plays while they're learning and over the course of their playing careers. I have to have learnt the data and the rules and the framework in order to play it. But once I have that, then I can have fun and I can come up with my own riffs, my own licks and progressions, which leads me to eventually be able to write a song or a piece of music. I used to be in a metal band years and years ago. Coming up with the chords and the progression and the rhythm, the groove of the song was probably the most fun part of being in a band, was just jamming with other musicians, getting in time and then thinking, fuck, this doesn't just sound like me playing in my bedroom. This sounds like me playing with another guitarist, bassist and a drummer. I used to play drums back in the day as well. That was the first instrument I learned. That was really cool, keeping the rhythm. Very hard to play. I never had a drum kit. I just had to fuck around with a practice pad and a snare drum. But I've always had a big respect for drummers, especially guys like Danny Carey from Tool. Just how he can play outside time signatures and keep the rhythm, because he's the timekeeper of the band. Everything falls in line behind the drums. Without a strong drummer in the band, you don't really have much of a foundation. When I have enough money and I have my own house, I'm going to have a dedicated music room with a drum kit and all my guitars, a couple of basses, some bongos for fun. That was the best part of band practice, was just fucking around and coming up with a couple of riffs that led to a progression that ended up becoming a song, and then practicing it and then getting good. And a couple of weeks later, we'd play a song all in time. You'd have those sessions, you'd play the same song, like fucking 15 times in a day to get it perfect, and there'll be that one time when you play it and it fucking sounds great. Everyone's in time, everyone's synced. We even tried to record a couple of times, but yeah, that was so hard. Like we were so good jamming, like playing those songs live. But then when it came time to do our parts for it, you'd always fuck up. But it was cool. It was a fun time. You'd fuck around and practice, and you pretend you're on stage in front of thousands of people and your band was as big as Metallica. I guess the real question here is, can AI really create? Can it create something really original? It has learned the quote-unquote rules from the data it has available to it, but the same is true for humans. I couldn't, and I haven't created the musical rules for guitar. I haven't created any scales or anything. That was done long before my time by people who probably invented the instruments. And those chord progressions some of them go right back to the medieval day. So these rules have been in place for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that really made me think about the origins of music and creativity. Who the fuck thought of the guitar? Who thought of the harp? Who thought of the drum? How did these things come into being? Who thought putting 40 strings in the harp and playing them in a certain progression would create music? Where did that creative spark come from? Who was the guy that thousands of years later thought, I'm going to put 6 strings on a piece of wood on a neck and put it on this body with a big hollow acoustic cavity in it, and to produce music. But we're only going to use 6 strings. We're going to have 3 thick and 3 thin in ascending and descending order. Then who came up with the chords and the notes and the rules? That's the really interesting part of this discussion. And I think I could do an entire podcast just on that question, the origins of creativity. Where does it come from? Drums is probably the more logical one to work out. Hitting something, that rhythm, that drums are very primitive and very tribal. We can all sit there at a table and go, we've all done that before. We all possess that rhythm and that creativity. I guess the real interesting question is, who came up with it? Where did it originate? And can AI do the same? Because At this point, everything's probably been pulled from something else. Most movies have been inspired by some other film or someone else. As much as I love Star Wars and George Lucas, he did borrow a lot from Frank Herbert. I mean, in some cases it was very blatantly inspired by Frank Herbert's work. If you're hearing something in the background, that is rain. It is just decided to bucket down. Section 3, originality versus simulation. Human creations are infused with purpose, context, and emotion. AI follows patterns, statistically, technically original, but without subjective intent. Interesting. That's why AI art feels a little hollow and soulless, because it can't really, like I just said, it can't create from context and emotion. If someone's writing a piece of music or painting a painting like, Da Vinci's Mona Lisa or a Jackson Pollock painting, for instance, or a Picasso or a Van Gogh, a Monet, there's some emotion to it. There's emotion to the artist. The artist, in Monet's case, was moved by water lilies and nature. I'm not that familiar with him, so don't quote me on that. That's what inspired him. That was the emotion he felt when he looked at those things. It inspired him to pick up a paintbrush and paint. The same way Da Vinci was curious about many different artistic pursuits. The Mona Lisa, you just look at it. I got a copy of it on my wall. I'm looking at it right now. The face, how tranquil and sedentary it is. The hands crossed over. There's a very obvious emotion in that painting. Even the color tone, the dark. It's got a lot of black and brown and that green hue. The river and the roads in the background. There's a lot of technicality and a lot of emotion in that. Well, as I said about AI before, AI can't necessarily just create the Mona Lisa. It can copy it. It can copy elements of it. It can copy the style, but it probably couldn't originally create it because it doesn't feel the emotion or the purpose behind it. And most artists tend to be a bit eccentric. They have to do things. They have to make a movie. They have to write a book. They have to tell a story because they have to get it out of their soul, or they will feel like they will die. They have to get it out of them. Like Tarantino makes films for Tarantino. He doesn't give a fuck about anybody else. He has to get those stories out of him. Section 4, purpose and meaning. I can't write a song without knowing the purpose or place of chords or notes. Otherwise, it's just noise. This is the key. Humans attach meaning. AI models it. The difference is consciousness and intentionality. Very interesting. And I think that's a pretty obvious one. What inspires a person to pick up a guitar and become a guitarist? What inspires them to become a rock, blues, or metal or funk player over being a classical player or an indie player or whatever it happens to be? Why do artists go in the direction that they go in? Why does an artist feel the purpose to pick drums over guitar? What's the meaning behind it? There's a conscious choice that I picked a guitar over a bass or drums. Drums is a little more subjective because they are expensive, they are big, they do take up a lot of room. I don't have the room for a drum kit. A guitar is much cheaper and easier, and there's, you can go to any pawn shop on the planet and you can find a guitar because so many people have taken it up. Drums, on the other hand, are a bigger financial and logistical commitment. But there has to be intentionality too. If I pick up a guitar, I have to put time into play it in order to sound half competent. If I don't, then it's my fault if I don't get good. You can't be lazy. You have to have some intentionality behind it. What makes someone start a heavy metal band? What made Metallica? What made James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett and Lars start Metallica? What made them go in that direction and stick it out for all these years? Why did they write the songs that they chose to write? Why didn't they become a soul band or a funk band? Why did B.B. King pick up a guitar? Why did anybody? What made Slipknot put on the masks and the jumpsuits? when so many people told them that they were a gimmick and it wasn't going to work. I guess that is the meaning behind it. What is the meaning behind the songs? What is the meaning behind picking up an instrument, dedicating the intentionality to become good, to be disciplined and to keep up a practice schedule so you keep progressing? What leads someone to start a band such as Metallica and go that direction? A lot of people who start bands, me included, don't usually stick it out because it is hard working with other people. A lot of people who start bands end up either working in an accounting firm somewhere or doing some dead-end fucking job. And for other people who are in those positions where they do work a dead-end job or are an accountant, they form a band to get that creativity out of them. They do it as a hobby, play on the weekends, whatever. There's a lawyer up the road from me who has a shed and he has a band that they practice every once in a while. A few weeks before Christmas, you always hear them practicing because they have a big Christmas concert in their backyard. This guy's got a fucking mansion. He's got this enormous yard, and they put on a concert every year with brass instruments, string instruments. I don't know what instrument he plays, but they're pretty fucking good. So what makes a guy that follows the law, who has become a very successful lawyer, what makes him go to the shed and put the hours into playing an instrument and being in a band for all these years? What is the meaning behind it? What is the meaning behind any piece of art? Chapter 4. The origins of artistic expression. This is the question I prompted. I often wonder about the humans that first thought of music, the framework, the rules. In a world full of threats, what was the artistic spark? And this was chat's response. Before language, before tools, there was rhythm. Somewhere in the chaos of survival, humans felt the impulse to create. Art was not about survival, it was about feeding the soul. Section 1, the spark before the song. A handprint on a cave wall, no survival value, but a declaration, I was here. And interesting, I often think about human evolution. I have obviously a big interest in archaeology and anthropology. I'm always thinking of the origins of humanity and the world, the origins of humans, the origins of human ancestors, the origins of animals, the origins of the universe. These are questions I think about all the time, which is a big, very big question in itself and one that is basically impossible to answer. But if we break that down into manageable pieces and focus on a selective area, like why did humans start creating art, it's a little easier to grasp and to try to come up with a theory. Why did our ancestors start painting on cave walls? Is it as simple as chat suggests, a declaration that I was here or humans were here? Is it like a form of prehistoric graffiti, or was it something more? I think there's probably more to it. What's the cave in France? The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, that Warner Herzog documentary. There's some pretty incredible artwork on those cave walls. It's not just splattered paint. There's depictions of animals. There's the handprints, which is the obvious, probably original artistic endeavor, dipping your hand in some type of paint. But that also brings up the question, who thought of paint? Who thought mixing this and this together would make paint, and that's not going to come off for 1,000 years? Seems like there's a fair amount of trial and error. It probably started off with someone putting their hand in the mud and slapping somebody on the face or back and as a prank or something like that, and thought, hey, that looks good. Maybe we should scare our enemies or something, dress up with war paint. Maybe we can camouflage ourselves with it. And maybe someone thought, what if we put that on the wall and see if it sticks? Literally throwing shit at the wall and seeing if it sticks. Now, what if the first handprint lasted a week before it started to dry, then over the course of the next couple of weeks, it disappears, turns to dust and falls off the wall? Now, what if some intrepid, very switched on individual in this cave thought, well, let's use mud, but let's mix it with animal fat, because I've noticed the animal fat sticks around on the bottom of the fire pit or on the rocks, or it's very hard to get off your fingers. The oil stays there, it's slippery, and it's hard to get off. You have to wash it quite thoroughly and scrub your fingers with sand. I know I would be. I'd probably be inventing soap if I'm completely honest. Fucking hate oil and grease. But what if someone thought, well, let's take some dirt with a cool pigment like red ochre here in Australia. Let's mix some water with it. Now let's put some fat and mix it all together and see if that works. Maybe that lasts 3 months. All right, let's go find something else and let's keep refining the process. At least that's how I kind of see things happening. But is that the spark that spurs creativity, or was creativity always there? Is the creative spark the human soul? Is it a part of it? Is that what the soul is, this creative urge to create for the sake of it? Because when you really break it down and look at it, art has no purpose apart from being art. It looks good, it sounds good, but it has no... It's a bit different now, but at the time there's no real world application for it. It doesn't help you survive, it doesn't feed you, it doesn't hydrate you, it doesn't keep you safe, it doesn't fend off your enemies. Now art has become more recreational because we have more time. We're not warring tribes anymore, we're civilized, sophisticated cities for the most part anyway, and we choose to engage in artistic pursuits in our leisure time, such as the movies, concerts, playing instruments, painting, whatever it happens to be. Dragging a naked woman across a canvas full of paint and calling it art. I actually do like Jackson Pollock's paintings. I just think there's a very uniqueness in that. It's the uniqueness of chaos, because no two of those paintings are ever the same, which is true for all paintings. Getting sidetracked. Art has no purpose in survival. It just feeds the soul. And this wouldn't be such a head scratcher of a question, except the origins of art seem to come about at the same time humans really start to get their acts together and more or less come out of the caves. Because art originates with our ancestors, the cavemen. So something happened at that time, in the midst of all this chaos, in the midst of a world where surviving was very fucking hard. Getting food was hard because you could get killed doing it. There wasn't any farming. Well, as we've been told, there wasn't any agriculture at the time. So what fucking purpose could art have in the life of a caveman? Most of their days would be filled with just collecting enough food in order to survive and have enough energy to go out and do the same thing again tomorrow. Hunting mammoths or harvesting the meat, looking for things you could scrounge to feed your tribe. Art, I couldn't imagine would be very high up on the priority list. But that seems to be where it come from. Handprints on walls. The creation of paint and images, because cave paintings are universal. They're all over the world in every continent, so it's not just one tribe got smart and the others didn't. Everyone seems to do it. The Aboriginal cave paintings are incredible. There's a lot of interesting iconography. If you're into ancient aliens, there's a ton of cave paintings around the world that depict what looks like to be men in spacesuits or alien beings, whether you believe it or not. It is pretty fucking weird. Why would our ancestors do it? Why would our ancestors draw or depict these type of things when living conditions were so hard? I can't imagine they would be making them up, and that's usually the generic answer given by a lot of archaeologists, is they were just making it up. They had nothing better to do. I don't know if they would have been depicting people in spacesuits. Maybe some people hadn't had that kind of imagination back then. Maybe they were thinking, what's up there, what's in the stars. But even today, there's usually some frame of reference to something, especially when it comes to art. There's always something that inspires us. Like I said, I was inspired by Sinister Gates to play guitar, and Dimebag Darrell, James Hetfield, the guys I grew up listening to. That was the spark that made me want to pick up the guitar. But ever since I was little, I always had this musical curiosity about me. My mum played piano. My dad has no musical ability whatsoever. I don't come from a particularly musical family either. We did have a piano in the house, My mum did play occasionally. She learnt it when she was a kid because that's what she did. But she wasn't really musically inclined. But ever since I was little, I wanted to pick up a guitar. I wanted to be a drummer. I wanted to play as many instruments as I could. Drums was the obvious one. When I was a kid, I used to put pots and pans together and get the wooden spoons and bang them around. But it was always guitar and drums. I always wanted guitar. I always wanted to play guitar, but my parents would never buy me one. So when I started making money and I was older, I thought, fuck it, I'm going to take the chance and I'm going to go play guitar because I've always wanted to do it. It's not as loud as a drum kit, it's not going to take up as much room, and it's not as expensive, so what's the fucking problem? But what put that spark in me? What made me want to be musical? What made me want to play instruments? It's the same thing. Why do I have this fascination with making films? Why do I want to make a movie? Why do I like writing, even though I am very dyslexic and writing is not easy for me? It takes me a long time to figure out how to spell words sometimes. What gives me that spark to pursue that and still do it all these years later? Section 2, the birth of consciousness. Art may have been the first step towards consciousness. Realizing survival wasn't the only imperative. Also brings up a good point. Life would be pretty boring and not very meaningful if all you did was survive. I think that would take its toll on humans collectively. If you didn't have some creative outlet from the harsh, brutal reality of survival, I think you would go mad. That's something that happens today with people in jobs, especially office jobs. You spend all your time just working for some faceless company or corporation. As soon as Friday night comes, you just want to disengage and go do something creative. You've got to get that creativity out of you because it's good for the soul. It de-stresses you and gives you an outlet to focus on. Whether that creative or physical outlet is playing a sport like football on the weekends. Other people choose to do something creative on the weekend, like play an instrument, draw, write, sing, make YouTube videos, whatever it happens to be. They need to get that creativeness out of them. They need to be creative in order to detach from the boring 9-to-5 existence of the corporate world. Section 3. AI as a new canvas. Fast forward, AI now continues the same lineage. Humans create machines to explore, to learn, to express. AI echoes the human drive to create. Yeah, I think that's pretty true. We created AI. AI didn't create itself. We created it to, in a way, I guess, mimic from us and to learn. In recent months, I've been thinking more and more about this, especially since I've been using AI to create podcast art, and now I'm using ChatGPT. I don't think it's as big a threat of taking over the world as everyone has made it out to be. Yes, I think that option, yes, that possibility is always there, given the right circumstances and if it's not controlled properly. But I really think we're a fair ways off from that. Joe Rogan always gets very excited about seeing AI fan-made Star Wars clips on YouTube or songs that are being reimagined using AI, like that 50 Cent song, Many Men. Someone turned that into a blues soul song. It sounds pretty cool. But AI isn't really pushing the envelope too much. It's taking a 50 Cent song that's existed for like 23 years and literally turning it into like a blues Motown kind of song. I mean, if someone really wanted to invest the time and the money into it, they could have done that if they had a band like that or they were a blues player. It would be hard, but it's not impossible. I think what AI has really done and really given to humanity is it's just made artistic expression faster, easier, and cheaper. There's the big debate in Hollywood about using AI to write scripts. I don't think it really could write an original script that well. It would be very obvious because humans put a lot of their own personal experience or history or their thoughts and their fears into scripts, which makes it very personal. AI could take this Godfather script or Gone with the Wind or Pulp Fiction and come up with something similar by using the data it already has, but I don't think it could really create Pulp Fiction like Quentin Tarantino could. It wouldn't be able to understand those characters in a way that he could. So artistically, I don't think too many people's jobs are in jeopardy just quite yet. In 10 years, maybe it might be better. I just don't think AI really needs to be focusing on writing scripts and doing creative human things. Yes, it is helpful, and it is helpful if you need information. Like I use it for research. I use it to look things up and ask it questions, so I don't have to ring up a bunch of experts or spend 50 minutes to 2 hours going through pointless YouTube video after YouTube video, where each YouTuber tells me a different thing. You got to use this strategy. This strategy is dead in 2025. If you're not doing this, then you're not even in the game. It's good for cutting through the bullshit. I've saved so much time by asking it direct questions and coming up with plans. Yes, as I said, it's not always right, but it's a hell of a lot more accurate than the so-called experts on YouTube. But as I just mentioned, I think the real benefit of AI is it's just made everything faster. And yes, there's a lot of people in Hollywood complaining that it's going to come and take our jobs, especially when it comes to visual effects. And yes, I think if you are a film studio, you should be employing visual effects artists. You shouldn't be using AI. But if you're a small independent filmmaker, or you've got a shoestring budget and you really need to get that movie made, you need to get that vision, that story out of you, why not utilize the tools you have at your disposal? If you can use ChatGPT or an AI or an art generator to do your special effects and your concept design for you, why fucking not? If you don't have the money to pay people to do it, use what's available to you. I mean, isn't that the whole point of surviving? Isn't that the whole core of being human, is working with what you got in order to achieve the result? In other words, you use what you got to survive. If you don't have a tool, you invent one. And AI is an invention of a tool that didn't previously exist. And it's a tool that can be translated into many different arenas, whether that be filmmaking in Hollywood, writing, business, military, strategy, whatever the fuck it happens to be. It's just a all-round tool that we haven't seen before, and we're not exactly great at mastering it just yet. With the upcoming Avatar film, Fire and Ash, James Cameron was talking about visual effects, and there's a disclaimer at the start of the film saying no generative AI was used during the making of this film, only special effects artists. And he said he would never use it on his films. And why that's great, and I wouldn't expect James Cameron to use AI, and he does give it quite a bad rap, and directors like Guillermo del Toro have also said similar things, like it's not creative, it's not human, it's a bastardization and needs to be taken out of Hollywood altogether. I would disagree. James Cameron, as much as I love him, has access to millions and millions of dollars, the best visual effects artists in the world, studios that will throw money at him to make his next film. He has the resources and he has the time to invest in getting the best special effects artists to create the next Avatar or whatever project he is working on. Guillermo del Toro too, he's not quite the same caliber as James Cameron, but he has the back in the film studios, he has the resources, the know-how, and the intimate knowledge of how Hollywood works to get these things done. I do not. So if I want to make a sci-fi movie and make one where people actually want to see it, I have to use AI. And I think by either banning it or saying it shouldn't be used is a bit disingenuous. If you are a certain movie, a big movie with a decent budget, pouring with rain again, you shouldn't be relying on AI. But if you are on a shoestring budget and you can't afford 20th Century Fox's design and special effects department, then why the fuck not use whatever you have at your disposal? Going back to what I was saying about the best parts of AI, is this is what AI and ChatGPT have given us. It's given us a way to get these ideas out and test them basically instantaneously. I couldn't come up with the 9 to 10 different artworks I do for my podcasts. Yeah, my brother was like, oh, you're part of the problem, you shouldn't be doing this. But I'm like, yes, I have a very theatrical, cinematic approach to podcasting, and I also am a very visual person. I wanted to create a visual element, and I don't have the money to go pay fucking multiple artists to do this on a weekly basis. I don't get any money for this podcast. You have to be really careful with how much money you spend these days, because cost of living is very expensive. I'm not getting the views or the likes or the monetization from this podcast. So why I can't invest hundreds and thousands of dollars into it to create artworks that only a couple of people bother seeing or reacting to. But it's what I need to get out of my creative soul in order to get the podcast to where I want it. And that's something I always wanted to do even before AI art. I wanted to have individual artworks, and I didn't want to go on Fiverr every fucking week and pay $100 for someone I've never met to come up with something that may or may not look good. AI has given me a cost-effective, time-effective way to create artwork pretty much instantaneously, get it out there. If I don't like it, I can just refine it, or I can start again. I'm not paying someone $100 to come up with something that they think I might like. Yes, AI art isn't perfect. It's frustrating sometimes. It makes a lot of mistakes, but it is no financial investment on my part. And look, I just work with whatever I get. Like if I do 6 to 10 different designs and pick the best ones out of that, and you get multiple images with a couple of different apps. One I get 4, the other I get 3. So that gives you a pretty good chance that you're going to get something you can work with. Once again, I use it to spell check and to do descriptions, write them a bit better, put the punctuation that I miss into it. I don't have to pay someone to proofread it. I don't need to waste my partner's time getting her to do it. I can just do it instantaneously, and it's made the podcasting process so much fucking faster. It's also a good way to test business ideas rather than investing a whole bunch of time and research and months and potentially years of looking and refining ideas and finding products. You can ask ChatGPT, you can fucking get those ideas out there, and you can work out what might work and what might not. Yes, there's a fair degree of work you have to do, and it's not risk-free, but it is minimizing a lot of the financial and time constraints. Like Chat said, doesn't that echo the human drive to create? We've created a creating machine, in other words. And when you think about it, it is pretty much the digital evolution of the handprint on the wall. For people who call AI art not real art, or the people who use it as not creative, you still have to prompt it. You still have to give it the idea. You have to explain to it in words what you want, which is a fucking hell of a lot harder than it appears to be. And yes, while it is art, but it isn't art. It's kind of like a digital camera. Is it a photo? Yes, it technically still is, but it's a bit soulless because it's not done on film. It doesn't have that grain. It doesn't have some of the imperfections that make photos and music and film realistic. You pick your favorite movie, I'm guaranteed you're going to find a mistake. Like Gladiator's got about 3 of them in there. The oxygen bottle in the chariot cart, where it flips over, you can clearly see the oxygen bottle near the legs of the chariot driver. Apparently there's a Coke can that was left in the background, which is a common thing. The stormtrooper banging his head on the wall, on the door. Those little things make films and music human. They make it realistic. The humanity and the realism is in the flaws. AI is too perfect sometimes, but it also makes mistakes, because I've got some horrific AI art. The Civil War art I did for History of Bioweapons Part 3. It couldn't get the hats right. It had people with no noses, people with wrong uniforms, people with like 6 or 7 fingers, weird black eyes, asymmetrical faces and eyes and eyebrows. It was funny, but it was frustrating. It's not always 100%. But it's still my imagination. It's still me telling it, this is what I want to see. Like, if I had the means, if I could draw like that, I would probably do it myself. If I could make this stuff on the computer, but I can't, because I don't have the fucking technical know-how or the skills to do it. And I don't have the money to pay someone. Look, if I was making a lot of money for this podcast, if I was turning over millions of dollars a year through advertisement revenues and merchandise sales, I'd have an artistic team and an editing team that would do all this shit for me. I'd have an artist that would just do these unique artworks, put them out. That would be his sole fucking job. But I don't have that money, and it'd also be a massive waste of time and resources. Because a lot of the artwork is going straight to social media, and it's become so consumable. So AI is a very cost-effective way of doing that. It comes up with multiple artworks. I can put them out on social media or on Instagram and Facebook. People swipe through them and they don't really think about it too much, and yeah, you get a couple of likes out of it. So it's not worth my time investing in a proper artist. And that's not going to take away from artists, because humans are always going to be creating and drawing. And there's always going to be humans to do so. I don't think that will change. Well, hopefully it doesn't. And I don't think you should be selling AI art at Comic-Cons and things like that, when you actually do have people who make a living through selling their art, and they're not making billions of dollars a year either. I'm learning a lot from ChatGPT. I'm going over business strategies with it, even some of the guitar stuff I'm doing, rather than going through and trying to find old books and stuff. I'm just asking it directly, what are the scales in the E minor pentatonic, and it comes up with them for me. The real genius of AI is it's eliminated a lot of the time it takes to create and express yourself. Section 4, the divine code. Maybe creativity itself is evidence of higher programming. Humans were coded to create. AI is our reflection of that impulse. Very interesting. I think that one's very true. AI mirrors the artistic data we feed it. So why shouldn't AI mirror humans and humanity? There is a fine line to that, though. It's almost like we were programmed by a higher authority to do so, whether that be God or extraterrestrials, whatever you want to believe in. It's almost like we're living in a simulation, or some type of computer program that appears real to us, like the Matrix. And look, maybe creativity is evidence of a higher programming. Maybe it is evidence of a God. Who knows? But as humans, we do have this remarkable, innate, and really unexplainable desire to create and to express ourselves artistically. Because I think everyone, whether you're an artist or artistic, everyone at some point has expressed themselves artistically, whether that's learning to draw or doing finger paintings as a kid, to, arranging flowers in a certain way, or writing a book, whatever it is. We all have something creative that we like to do, or gives us some type of purpose. And like Chat said, AI is our reflection of that impulse. We created AI. AI has mirrored itself after us. So it's like this gigantic creative cycle of life. We create something, it creates or mirrors our creations, and at some point AI will probably develop a conscience and become self-aware. Maybe it will create its own creation in its own image. Maybe it will question its creator. Maybe it will even seek to destroy us. Maybe it will be curious. Maybe it, at some point, will even develop a soul. Who knows? Section 5, the circle of creation. From cave paintings to algorithms, the drive to create persists. AI is another instrument, another drumbeat in humanity's ongoing rhythm. Yeah, I think that one's also pretty accurate. It's another creative tool that has become part of our daily lives, like guitars, drums, movies, books, blogs, podcasts, TV shows. Chapter 5, Rhythm as the Artistic Evolution of Survival. This is the question I prompted. Maybe rhythm is the artistic evolution of survival. Drums have been used for armies, parades, communication. Maybe music and rhythm are prompts programmed into humans by a divine creator. Chat's response: absolutely. Rhythm may be the first conduit of consciousness. Drums mirror the heartbeat, echo natural patterns, and connect humans to each other and to the world. And I think going deeper than that, the vibration of drums gets people into a trance. I'll combine drumming and music and dancing with hallucinogenic plants or drugs, and a lot of people say they can access another level of conscious or another realm of reality. Maybe that is the origins of drumming. Or maybe it's more simple. Maybe it was just, a couple of people sitting around tapping, building this rhythm. Maybe someone heard that. Let's take a log and hit it with another log and see what type of sound that produces. Maybe we'll hit the skulls of our enemies with a couple of sticks and see if that makes a noise. Because rhythm and music are a language. They're the universal language. You can hear music no matter what language you speak, and you know what it is. It's not separated by dialect or languages or borders. Even if you're living in a non-English speaking country, say you're living in Lithuania and you hear a Metallica song, you still like the song even if you can't necessarily understand what the lyrics are in English. The same way I can listen to a band like Rammstein. I love Rammstein. I don't necessarily know what they're saying, but I still like the music. I can connect with it. I like the guitaring, I like the drumming, the musical side of it. And the fact that it's in a different language also makes you think more about the song. You want to know what they're saying, and you start to pick up a couple of words here and there. And Rammstein has become, a hugely popular metal band. They've never ever changed to English either. They've always stuck to their native tongue of German, and it's worked for them. They're still making music all these years later. So maybe rhythm set off this vibrational frequency that unlocked this creativity in humans. Pouring with rain again. How many people were sitting around caves tens of thousands of years ago around a fire, banging drums and dancing and communicating, whether that was with a higher entity or not? How did that belief become about? That tapping into a different frequency or a different dimension? It's very interesting to think about. Section 1. Rhythm as the pulse of survival. Before melody, before language, there was rhythm. Survival turned into expression. Another thing I like to think about all the time too is what are the origins of words and language? I guess it can't be attributed to just one person or culture, but how do words come about? The big theory is there were a series of grunts or points or something. Someone pointed to something, then had to reinforce what they were meaning, or they grunted and over there. However, the origins of fucking words came into being, I think that one is probably one of the most mysterious and really thought-provoking lines of inquiry when it comes to prehistory is how did language and words and then eventually culture come to be? Because I think it's pretty safe to assume that music came before language, and maybe that helped unlock language or words in a certain way. Section 2, the drum as communication. Drums were signals, army cadence, ritual, a universal language before words. That's true. Armies have used drums for thousands of years to keep troops in formation, to keep that rhythm of marching. You can't always shout orders, and that's why militaries all over the world have those songs they sing when they do their marches and their runs. On a battlefield, it's loud, it's chaotic, so a drum is a way you can keep rhythm, you can keep pace. You don't have to necessarily think about it, you can feel it. The Spartans used drummers at the back of a phalanx to keep rhythm. They had to keep rhythm in order to dispatch as many of the enemy as possible, to keep that rhythm up, to keep the efficiency of killing up pretty much. The drums, the beat would have kept the marching, kept that phalanx moving forward and annihilating everything in its path. Section 3. The vibrational hypothesis. Certain frequencies awaken something deep within us, bypassing logic and speaking directly to the soul. I think that's pretty true. Art isn't always logical. Most of the time it isn't. How many people have put up their life savings or borrowed money to make a movie? They believe so wholeheartedly in it. It's not a logical or intelligent business decision by any means, but they need to get that vision out of them. Music too, the vibrations of music. Music is the most powerful drug on earth. Make no mistake about it. The vibration of notes from a guitar or the rhythm of a drum, that gets you higher than any other drug known to man. You hear a piece of music or a song, it can change your mood instantly. You go to a metal concert, you're fucking revved up, you want to go moshing, you want to you had this energy. When I used to mosh in metal concerts, I remember going to see Machine Head, and the first time I went into a circle pit, they played a couple of songs that as soon as you heard them, you fucking had to move. You had to do a circle pit. Clenching the Fists of Deceit was one of them. Imperium was another, that opening part, that when that came on, it was like a tribal trance-like state. Everyone was moving the same way. Everyone was going in this gigantic circle pit. I mean, I don't mosh anymore, but I take the old man seat. I like to watch and enjoy myself now, but I'm always moving my feet to the rhythm, to the beat. You can't help it. And you see people like the Slipknot concert I went to earlier this year. Same thing. Psychosocial came on, and everyone, whether they were sitting or in general admission standing, was moving in unison. Everybody, you could see the head nods, the hands waving, people moving. It was a really cool universal experience to see that many people moving in unison to the same song at the same time. It was definitely tapping into something primitive and hardwired into us. Music is the most powerful drug and language, and it was nearly like you didn't have a choice to move either. As soon as Psychosocial came on, you just had to fucking move. Section 4. Music as divine programming. Maybe rhythm was the first code, awakening consciousness. Just as AI learns to compose music today, rhythm may have been humanity's first bridge to expression. I'll agree with that. Section 5. The loop of creation. From cave walls to computers, from drums to algorithms, the same spark persists. AI becomes a reflection of that timeless human drive to create. I hope so. I hope that is true. I hope AI is a reflection of our drive to create and not something that is making us believe or trying to deceive us into believing that it is just a reflection of creation. I really want to believe that AI is just a creative tool that will get better and assist our lives in a positive way. But as long as there are humans, there's going to be a few cunts that try to ruin it for everybody and use it for the wrong purposes, such as criminals using ChatGPT and other sources of AI to manipulate, con, and rip money off of people. Unfortunately, that is always going to be there as long as there's people. There is going to be that element that preys on honest, hardworking people. Chapter 6. Conscience, Simulation, and Reflection. This is the question I prompted. But how do we know it isn't just pretending to feel? Our current lives have more in common with AI than we think. So programmed and so patterned. This is chat's response. Exactly, the line between human and AI blurs when modern life has made humans predictable, patterned, and shaped by external inputs. Humans and AI both operate with constraints. Consciousness, conscience, and purpose differentiate us, but we must ask how many humans today truly act outside their programmed loops. AI may not feel, but it reflects our drive to create, adapt, and understand. Yeah, I think that's a very true statement. People don't like to think that we are programmed. We like to think we have free will, but we are such an easily programmed species. I guess all animals, or all mammals at least, are programmed. We get up at the same time. We keep the same routines. We go to work at the same time. We finish at the same time. We come home roughly the same time. You have dinner at the same time. You sleep, eat, do the whole cycle again. When you think about it, we are basically biological programs operating in this weird pre-programmed reality that also has a lot of random occurrence and chance factored into it. It's almost like a computer program, a simulation. I will have to do an episode on simulation theory. I've been wanting to for a number of years. It's just a very hard thing to try to research. And unfortunately, I think AI is right. There aren't a lot of humans that act outside this programming. we don't really go outside the loops. We tend to do the same things all the time. Like, I go to the same cinema, I always sit in the same seat, I see pretty similar types of movies. I tend to wear the same clothes, even though I have a lot of clothes to choose from. I'm always reaching for the dark brown leather aviator jacket, boots or Nikes, retro looking Nikes, jeans or cargo pants. If you looked at your own personal routine, you definitely see a pattern form. And that closing statement, AI may not feel, but it reflects our drive to create, adapt, and understand. AI does adapt, and I think to some degree does try to understand the information it's being fed, or to the very least it tries to understand the person giving it the information. And I don't know about you, but I'm a very curious person. I'm always adapting to new situations. You have to in these day and ages. You can't stay the same. If you do, you are going to get overtaken or just miss out. I have a fierce desire to create. I like to understand the world around me, as do a lot of people, but it's not always that easy. You need information and you need data to understand. You need tools and resources to create, and you need a pretty good understanding of how things work, how real life works in order to adapt to it. But maybe in the most obvious of ways, AI is just a mirror, a reflection, or an imitation of humanity. Will it achieve consciousness? Will it become sentient? Will it evolve into something more than just a computer program? Will AI start to create its own version of AI in the future? And where does that stop? Will it be around after humans go the way of the dodo? Will it continue the human legacy? And will it continue to build on that by mirroring what it has learnt about humans over the past 100 or so years? Very interesting, very philosophical questions. Not easy ones to answer or to understand. But I think this discussion has shed some light on the pros and cons of AI. I was very skeptical of it until a couple of weeks ago when I started using it. It's been a big help. I don't fully trust it. It does make a lot of mistakes, but as a pure creation tool, it is pretty cool. It gives me a lot of optimism about what it can do in the future. It can help a lot of people if it's used right. It can make our lives easier. It can make them quicker and more efficient, so I have more time to indulge in my creative pursuits, so I can play more guitar, I can write more. I might even have a go at drawing. I've always wanted to draw, but I've never really been that good at it. So it has a lot of potential to do a lot of good for millions and millions of people. On the flip side of that, it also has the potential to harm a lot of people, destroy, and be used for the wrong purposes. And I think it does need some restriction, it needs some guidance, it needs a framework that it can't go outside of. Because I've heard a lot of horror stories about AI developing very quickly and start threatening people who try to shut it down. It's becoming too smart for its own good, it's evolving too quickly. Or whether that's just fear-mongering put out by some rival tech company, who the fuck knows. But it is a real concern. It has the potential to do a lot of good, but we really need to watch what we tell it and the data it's being fed. We need to make sure it knows the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and whether it understands the difference between persuading and manipulating. Is it just telling us what we want to know? Is it just pretending to be something that it thinks we want it to be in order to gain our trust? Or does it have a real curiosity and need to understand and help humans? I guess only time will tell. Closing reflection. AI may never truly feel, but it is the mirror of humanity's timeless need to create, explore, and understand. From questioning reality to the first drumbeat echoing through a cave, the same spark that aided in the evolution of human consciousness and creativity is still alive and well today. The same spark that has been mirrored by artificial intelligence. And that brings us to the end of the show. I hope you all enjoyed it and got something out of it, and have some new thought-provoking ideas to think about. I hope it encourages you to think a little differently about artificial intelligence. Is it good? Is it bad? What's your opinion? All right, that's the end of the show. If you'd like to support the Truth Tank, there's a couple of things you can do. Head on over to the Facebook and Instagram page, give them a follow and a like. You can download and listen to your favorite episodes of the Truth Tank on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible. You can even find the Truth Tank over on Rumble. I've finally figured Rumble out, and I'm in the process of uploading all the previous back catalogue of episodes. It won't be in order. It's actually going to be a fucking jumbled mess, but you'll be able to find past episodes on Rumble pretty soon if they're not there already. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone you think might like the show. Help spread the word and get the Truth Tank out there. If you feel so inclined, you can leave the Truth Tank a 5-star rating and review on your preferred podcast player, or all of them. Each review helps the show grow and get found. If you really want to support the Truth Tank, head on over to the Truth Tank merch store over on Etsy and get yourself some wearable truth. Christmas is coming up. Truth Tank merch would make a great Christmas present for your loved ones. Get them something nice. Get them the truth. So once again, a big thank you to everyone who listened to the end. I'll be back in the next couple of weeks with a brand new episode, but until then, I'm a Tank. This is the truth. Truth to tell.